Hey folks, welcome back. So this is a home stretch. I am supposed to keep you entertained for the next 20, 25 minutes, so let's get into it. So day one was actually pretty cool. It was a strong start to the event. I think for me, the couple of things, just kind of at a meta level, we spent a lot of time talking about NSO and NSO innovation, and I think it really drove home the point. The platform is 10 years old. It's been part of Cisco for 10 years, and we continue to do, some immensely cool stuff. But we also started talking about some of the innovation. We talked about some of the cool stuff that's happening with the workflow. We had just a touch of AI. I know we had to. That's a rule now that every conference has to have some AI content. But hopefully, what you saw, what you'll see for U.S. folks and folks that are just coming online. Well, we've tried to keep things very grounded in our approach with AI use cases, and kind of stay away from the hypey stuff and kind of look at practical things that'll help you actually do work and do useful things. And you'll see a lot more of that tomorrow. We have some bigger announcements to make on that front. But outside of that, we got it. I think the big story today from an NSO and Developer Days perspective was the out-of-band management suite. Something that folks have been asking for 10 years probably since NSO was NSO. We'll dig a little bit more into that with the second set of guests. But for now, our first set of guests, we're going to talk about something else that's been pretty cool. We have customers who want to run NSO in containers for a long, long time, and we've kind of had this secret off-the-menu approach to running containers, and we finally gave in and kind of gave an official containerized version of NSO, and I think it's opened up a lot of opportunities, just using NSO and open source and those kinds of things, and kind of that's where I wanted to start with, start with you and see, what's your take? What's kind of cool about what we've done and what it's really enabled you to do? Maybe Kristian, start with you, and then we go with Leo.
Yeah. I think I started first, actually.
Yeah, I think you actually did.
I think it's almost actually 10 years ago, or maybe 2016. I don't remember when sort of Docker came out, but we were early again, in that Deutsche Telekom project, right?
It's like you threw the ball, then you ran out and caught the ball.
Yeah, so it was hyped, right? But we did see a lot of benefits around that. Sort of the problems you had with just any NSO or any applications that you'd had inconsistent environments, right? What version of packages, what version of Java, all of these kinds of things, and just wrapping that up in a container and shipping it, it actually kind of solves that problem, right? And I think that sets us off on that trajectory. We eventually open sourced this project, NSO and Docker. I spent some time on that, and other people have as well, right? And I think that it's really cool to see your presentation, right, on sort of bringing this, I think, to the next level, right? Over these years, when 8 years ago or whatever in Docker, it was one kind of thing, right? Like shipping your developer laptop, essentially, to the customer's location and to get that reproducibility. It's an entirely different thing today, where we have like Kubernetes. It's almost expected, right, that you should deploy into Kubernetes. So I think that's really nice to see, all the things that you sort of put together.
Thanks, and thanks for what you've done actually with the containers. Actually, to follow up, it's what you said. It's with a container, you get something common to deploy, something quite always the same. And that what leads to open source, I guess, in a way, is just to have something standardized and something standard, and very easy to get the reference from it, and make it easy to deploy wherever you want, whatever is your context. So that's definitely the power of it. Yeah.
So is the story just simpler deployment? Is it, okay, instead of VMs, we gave you containers, it's just an easier way? Or is it, okay, there are cool things I could do, maybe different types of use cases, deploy in places that you might not have wanted to or been able to deploy before?
So I think it's multiple things, right? But it goes beyond just deploying, right? So deploying is one little sort of operations that you do, right? But if you think of the entire development workflow, that is important, right? I think that's really important. So when you have developers, they're typing their code over here in a Git repository, and then from that, entering those lines and committing it, right, into your production, it's sort of about all of that, right? and you got to have a process for all of it. And so containers, they help us do this, right? But they're not the entire answer. You need sort of that whole flow, right? So yeah, it's. I think it's an important aspect to remember, right? That you need to have that sort of integrated flow.
Cool. Where are you going to go with your work next? It was really cool. You kind of built on this. What do you see as the next mountain to climb?
Well, I actually heard about LSA in NSO recently. So the way to actually be able to scale out on some replicas, and that could be something that could completely integrate with Kubernetes and using containers, I guess, as well. So that's probably going to be the next step. And of course, always some stabilization, especially with the package, which is always a bit tricky to put in place. So always a lot of stuff to do. Even with standard thing, you have to work on making it stable. So yeah.
Cool. So for folks in the audience, folks that are watching online, where do you start? What's the ducks and bunnies easy version of starting with this?
the documentation, I guess, right? I mean, so I mean, these days, like when I started this, there was nothing, right? And so we put things together, right? But I mean, these days, the BU provides a lot of NSO images, right? And I think there's quite a bit of good documentation around that. This is a
so just because our documentation team's probably watching, did you say we have good documentation?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it is improving. Connis and his team it's showing, right? No, but I think this is a difficult area, right? Because you have a core product, NSO, and then it's like, oh, how do you deploy it, right? And how do you operationalize it and all these things? And they're sort of fringe, right? So how much support does the BU provide in this case, right? And that is probably, it slides over time. So, you back up 8 years, and then Docker was very new, and you're like, okay, so that's for pioneers. And then as things progress, so I mean, if you look at where the BU is currently, you provide some of these images, there's a production, and there's a development image, right? So that you can build things out of this, right? I guess the BU hasn't arrived at a Helm chart yet, but maybe, that's the next step, right?
Well, not for this. Pay attention tomorrow.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Tomorrow, product announcement. No, so I think that there's it's constantly moving, right? But I think that where do you start, right? The base resources that you get out of the NSO documentation is a good starting place, and then check out your repo, I suppose, if you want to deploy it in Kubernetes. I really don't see why would you do it any other way if you want to put it in Kubernetes, right? And do a Helm chart.
Of course, I'm not.
Are you biased in this or
no? But I mean, it's good for us to see, right? I mean, we tried to do a good job with the documentation, but it was then very cool to see you then take that and actually turn it into something tangible. You can see it's like, okay, this is not just theoretical, this is...
But there is a way to avoid documentation is to make something standard. I'm going to use the word standard and standard again, because that's the point. Making it open source, making it matching the standard and the references is helping to avoid documentation, because operators expect things to be already like that, and they know what to do. And that's the point. And then you avoid the French. Even if I'm French, I mean, it makes it easier for sure.
Yep.
So I asked him what's next for him. What's next for you?
So if you've seen my presentation earlier today, right, I think it's very quite exciting actually that the architecture of NSO services that we've been working on for so long at Deutsche Telekom, where we published that, right, as another open source project that we call RESPNet. I think that's nice. I mean, it's one of those things that's sort of like, internally we've had that. We think of these concepts, how do we build large network automation systems in NSO? But it's very hard to explain to people, right? We sit through hours of slides and we show, do this, do that. And sometimes you're just like, yeah, you want to share your code, right? And we've had some difficulty with that. And so we've taken the time to put together a lot of our example code, cleaned up a little bit, right, and then into this RESPNet project. So I think that's really cool. So I'm looking forward to feedback really from people looking into that.
And it's the same kind of thing, right? You're taking kind of our two-dimensional view of the world and turned it into something real and tangible. I think it's a lot easier for folks to relate to and really start to understand where to go with this. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Certainly.
Any final words of wisdom for thousands of people?
As it says, don't hesitate to contribute or to just give some feedback to what we've done, and that's always very, very helpful anyway. Cool. So
Yep.
Okay. Other than Helm charts, what else do you want us doing? Other than Helm charts, what else do you want us doing on this
NSO features? Is this where we get to pitch? No, I think the Brownfield work is actually really quite interesting, right? It's another one of those sort of like forever issues, right?
Well, not anymore. It's okay.
Yeah, maybe not anymore, right? No, but it is. I mean, a lot of people are suffering from that, so I think that's finally seeing some improvements there. So that's really, really cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Now, our guests, Try and Jakob, come on down. Thank you. So when I got to see this for the first time, I thought it was incredibly cool.
Oh, thank you.
Just, everyone knows it's a thing we've been constantly get questions about. Hey, can you help us with out of band? I mean, in a perfect world, we have infrastructure as code. We have these really nice, deployment pipelines, and everyone follows them without question. And the reality is that's not the reality. There's always someone that comes in, and there's certainly that piece, but there's also the reality is networks are complex. We have very large customers, very complex environments, and they have different sets of operational tooling. They have different people that are touching that network for different reasons. There's never really been a good way to try and reconcile that. And we saw, so the concept for what you built, and it's like, okay, this is actually pretty cool. And I think it also changes the role of NSO. I mean, NSO has always been. We've had single source of truth for a long time. But now it's almost arbiter, right? Now we have a single source of truth in a different way, in that we can actually audit or assess what other tools are doing and kind of capture those kinds of things.
Better source.
Yes, better source of truth, even truthier. So, again, it's been an issue for a long time. So why did you take this approach versus other approaches?
Yeah, as you say, we have also known that this is a problem for a long time. It isn't like we woke up a year ago and said, oh, we can do something here. So actually, some of the slides in this presentation this morning was incorporated from an internal presentation that was 2016.
Oh, wow.
So, but the thing is that at that time, we didn't really have the tools. So that came with NSO 6.0, where we introduced the optimistic transaction and most importantly, the read set. Oh. So that made the basis for doing these type of things much more credible. So, but the other thing was that we took our time in doing research in this or doing investigations, and the outcome that we have now is nothing like it started out, I can say. So if you think this is hard, then you should have seen what we started with. So, and that was the pushback. We did need to go back and reinvent a couple of times because we got pushback that it was too hard from the PLM. So.
PLM's nothing but trouble.
No, in this case, it was really good.
Yeah, blind squirrel nut. So where do we go from this? Because it seems like a pretty solid set of, this is a thing I think all of our customers could turn out, deploy, bring value with. Where do we go from here?
We have a couple of things in the pipeline that we're considering or investigating. An example would be to so currently say that there is some out-of-band data introduced on a device. We will not in NSO. We will not detect this until we actually, for instance, redeploy our services in NSO, and it's kind of at this point that we will actually, check with the device to see if we're sync or not. And one thing that would be pretty interesting instead is that we've been talking about is it would be nice if we could, if device would be sending events with the changes to NSO, then we could more in kind of real time in NSO react. So we can consume these events and we can apply policies on them, and then we could kind of take actions more or less at the time where the out-of-band data is introduced instead of at a later stage,
the fact.
like when we are.
Cisco so it becomes almost more of a real-time monitoring tool. I'm not sure if that's quite the right way of looking at it, but
Yeah, we our internal name for it is sanitize, but that might be a bit bold. But the opportunity we have is that we just don't consume changes, but we actually react and push back things that shouldn't be there.
that's cool.
So that's a new way of regarding to be conformant with some rules. Or
I think it's cool because I think it opens up a different way of operating and a different way of managing infrastructure, managing configurations. Like you say, it's not completely reactive. You don't have to keep shuffling. Hopefully you don't step on the landmine. You kind of find it's broken the hard way because you break the network. This is a way to actually avoid that in the first place.
and there is more. We have played with the kicker.
Yeah, we have been considering being able to write kickers to react on out-of-band data and to be able to update the service intent based on the so we could, I mean, yeah, so how do I explain this? If you could
Yeah, I mean, I think we showed it without mentioning it, that
Okay.
there is the problem of stickiness
Sure.
with an out-of-band change, that's by design, something that we keep. But if you still want to have the service to decide on intent, you should actually change the intent
Oh, yeah.
from an out-of-band change instead. So that is hard to say that we can automate because it can be anything.
Yeah, there's some context in there. You need
But
to
you
understand.
could write code for it, and that code shouldn't be that hard to write. And so a kicker that would take back an out-of-band change and put it into the intent instead, that would make this no longer really an out-of-band. It would be an adaptation for reality, or what you would call it.
Sounds cool. So I'm going to take a step back a little bit. This is very cool, but I think one of the more interesting things is we have a product that's 10 years old, which is, like phenomenally old in software terms, right? There are not that many 10-year-old platforms that are out and still actively deployed and growing their user base. So how do you keep this fresh? I mean, this is cool. We have an active an innovation process within engineering to keep driving cool new stuff, not just incremental stuff. So what's what drives that? How do you kind of get there?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it is coming from that we actually accept the idea that we can do stuff and fail, and that's what the research. But it's sort of big head stuff to say research, but what we actually do is that we just try out stuff.
Cool.
And we do it, get our hands dirty and see if it works. And that's the fail fast. As I said, the succeed slow maybe is another thing. But then we have vetted something and we are onto something maybe.
But I think there's something to that. Just be curious, try stuff. Don't say, okay, it's successful, great, except celebrate that, but don't be complacent. And I mean, that's my experience with the team. The team is never complacent. There was, if I look at our backlog, there's a bunch of stuff which is not user requirements. It's, hey, we can do this better. Let's figure out what we can do.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a lot of ideas that have been there for a long time, and you can pick from those and try to prioritize from those. And then once in a while, someone has a wild guess, and then you can try that out.
And it works. Well, we're at time, so congratulations on getting the feature out. Again, I think it's a phenomenal engineering feat. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
So this is the end of day one. Everyone out there looks pretty exhausted, so I think we did a good job in filling your brains with all sorts of cool stuff. For folks online, folks that are just joining, hope you have some snacks and some coffee, because there's some really great content for you to review from day one. Otherwise, we'll call it a night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.